tomorrow we will learn in the morning at 8 o'clock, if that works for everybody.
All right.
8 o'clock tomorrow, is that okay?
Yes.
All right, we'll try to make it work. If not, I'll listen later. No problem.
If I send you the link.
Yeah, which you always do. Thank you very much.
Okay. So, Rav Chisda v'Rabba b'Haikra kamiflagi. They're really arguing in a pasuk. It says, "V'nirtza lo lechaper alav." The korban was accepted, so that's by a different korban, not the korban Pesach. So if somebody alav v'lo chavero, which means when a person brings a korban, he's miskaper, he can't be miskaper for his chaver. So Rabba savar chaver dumididei. So Rabba will learn his chaver is like him. Mahu the bar kapara, just like he is a bar kapara of chaver the bar kapara. So a regular person would be a bar kapara lafuki hay orel delav bar kapara. But by the korban Pesach, an uncircumcised male has no shaykhs to the korban Pesach. That's why he's excluded. But Rav Chisda savar hay orel nami. Even the bar chiyuvu, he has the ability technically to correct himself by circumcising himself. So in essence, you can't call him a bar chiyuv. You can't call him not a bar chiyuv. He is a bar chiyuv, so therefore he's a bar kapora. Hoyel the iboy mitzake nafshe, because he at least technically has the ability to correct his uncircumcised status by circumcising himself. So this is a concept of hoyel. Freit the Gemara umi islay Rav Chisda hoyel. But we see in other places in Shas that Rav Chisda does not follow hoyel. V'ha'itmar ha'oifem yontif l'chol. Somebody bakes on yontif. Tomorrow is Wednesday, and he has intent to bake for tomorrow. Rav Chisda omer loike. Rav Chisda says you get lot malchus because you're not allowed to bake from yontif to chol. Rabba omer eina loike. Why not? Rabba omer eina loike because Amrinon hoyel v'mikloile orchim chazile. Since Yontif afternoon when I baked, technically more orchim guests could come later on that afternoon. And therefore it's not necessarily that I'm baking for tomorrow. So hashtanami chazile v'lolaki. So therefore he doesn't get malchus because of hoyel. But Rav Chisda amar loike lo yamrin hoyel. So we see a steer in Rav Chisda. Bishlam de Rabba loikasha. By the arelus, he's lacking the mice of circumcision. And Hasam the loy mechusar maisa, there he baked something. He's not lacking the mice. However, Rav Chisda kasha. Amri ki lesle Rav Chisda hoyel lekula. Rav Chisda, when he doesn't apply hoyel, that's when it leads to a leniency. But in our case of Rav Chisda, where the hoyel will lead to a chumrah, that because he becomes a bar chiyuva, and therefore thinking about the oil will invalidate the korban, it leads to a chumrah islay. In such a situation, he will hold hoyel. Armalei marzutra b'red Rav Mori l'Ravina. Tani, we learned at the Braisa hoyel v'orla poiseles. We know that the status of arelus, of being uncircumcised, if you have in mind only for arelim, it will passel the korban. Same thing, Tumah. If you have in mind only for Tumah people, it will be poiseles. It'll passel the korban. Ma Tumah lo yasa b'miktzas Tumah kechol Tumah. So you didn't make partial Tumah like full Tumah. So af orla lo yasa miktzas orla kechol. So the same thing.
What does partial tuma mean?
We'll see. Good question. The Gemara will tell us what that means.
Oh, okay.
Af orla lo asa miktzas orla kechol orla. So by having let's say, 50% of the group who are circumcised and 50% also, it will not make it there. You're allowed to shech the Korban Pesach for a partial group. However, the Gemara wants to ask, like what Mario asked, Hai Tuma Echidami. What are we talking about? Partial Tuma. Tuma Gavri. Are we talking about if a person becomes Tamei? So then what does it mean? My loy also but mixes Tuma Kachol Tuma. The Ika Arba V'chamisha Gavri Tmein. The Arba V'chamisha Gavri Torah. Let's say you had 5 men that were Tamei, 5 men that were Tor. So lo paslu Tmeim l'Tohirim. The people, and let's say you shech the Korban Pesach for all 10. So the 5 that are Tamei do not ruin it for the 5 that are Tor. So maybe Gabi Orla Nami, Haloi Pasli. So maybe by Orla it should be, we see the same thing. If you have 5 that are circumcised and 5 that are uncircumcised, also doesn't pasul. This Nan, we had in our Mishnah, Lamulin V'la Reilim, if you shech for circumcised and uncircumcised, kosher. So then Maishna Tuma de Pshitale, why by the case of Tuma, it seems like a Dover Pashut, Umaishna Orla de Misafkele. And why then by Arelim and not Arelim are we questioning whether the Korban Pesach will be kosher or not? So it should be just as easy as Mixas Tuma is. It should be just as easy as having Mixas Orla. If you're talking about the whole individual, Ella says the Gemara, we're talking about Betuma's Basar. We're talking about the meat became Tummy. Umay loy asaba mixes Tuma kachol Tuma. What does it mean? You didn't make a part being Tuma like the whole thing being Tuma. The ilu it michadne evorim. Let's say you have an animal that hasn't been cut up, and a sheretz touches one of the limbs. Or let's say they are cut up, the Eivorim, and a sheretz touches one of the limbs. Hai di itmi sarfinan lay. The sheretz touched the one leg that you certainly have to burn, but v'idich achlinan lay. So the mayu kimta, then that's what it means, partial tuma versus total tuma. So the mayu kimta betumas basar. You're talking about not that it's an individual's tummy, but rather the meat is tummy, aim a seifa. So let's learn the seifa of the Baraisa. We said, Donin davar she'eino noig b'chol hazvachim. We learned something that is unique, that's not commonly seen by all korbanos. Mi davar she'eino noig b'chol hazvachim, from the same kind of thing. V'ayochech zman, but a paslus of zman, where you're thinking chutz l'zmana shenoig b'chol hazvachim. Now, what kind of tum are we talking about? My tum. Name a tumas basar. So what do you mean? Amay ein noig b'chol hazvachim. Tumas basar is present by all korbanos. Ella, but we do have cases of some korbanos where if the person is tamei, you can't bring it. But if Gans Klal Yisrael is tamei, you could bring it. Right? So we're back, not the Tumas Basar, but the Tumas Gavri. Ela Pshita, the Tumas Gavri. Umay en enoy b'chol hazvachim, the ilu b'chol hazvachim, orel v'tomim meshachin karbonoseyam. Let's say a person designated an animal to be a korban chatas, and then he became a tomei. He's allowed to send his korban through a shaliach. However, ilu b'pesach, orel v'tomim ein meshachin pischayim. By the Korban Pesach, if you're an Orel or you're a Tomei, you got to wait to Pesach Sheni. If you're a Tomei, you can't send a Shaliach to bring it. So then what happened? Reisha betumas basar the same as betumas gavri. This Baraisa seems to be a split personality. The Reisha is talking about the meat becoming Tomei, while the Seifa only can be referring to people becoming Tomei. Omer le'in. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that because Shem Tuma Kaparach. Listen, Tuma is Tuma. Whether it's Tumas Basar, Tumas Gavri, it's Tuma, Tuma is Tuma. However, by Sema, the Gemara tries another answer, that the Reisha is Tumas Basar, the Sefer Nami is Tumas Basar. And what does it mean, my ein anoy b'chol hazvachim? The ilu b'chol hazvachim bein shenit machelev, by all other korbanos, by a shlomi, by a chatas, by an osha. If the chelev became tamei, but there's some meat left over, bein shenit mabasar, or if the meat became tamei, the chelev kayem, the din is zorek es adam. We're taught. So if, for example, after you shecht a korban, there's no chelev and there's no basar, it got lost. The din is you would not do the zrika. But by other korbanos, as long as there's some chelev or some basar, because chelev is eaten by the mizbeach, and basar is eaten by the kohanim or by the bailim. So there is some achila. So therefore you're allowed to be zarkas adam. However, ilu b'pesach nitma chelev u'basar kayim zoyrek adam. If, for example, when you shech the korban Pesach, you collect the blood, you collect the chelev, and eventually you do zrika sadam, and you put the chelev on the mizbeach, and we go home and we eat the basar with our families at night. So, if the chelev got tamei, but there's meat, zorek sadam, nitma basar v'chelev kayim. You have chelev, but the basar became tamei, so nobody can eat it. The din is eino zorek sadam. Because what's the purpose of the korban Pesach? To eat the meat, and therefore there's no meat to eat because it's all tamei. You would not do zrika. So b'mayu kimta clearly betumas basar. So the name is seifa. Done in davar shaloi huter michlalo. We learned something where there's never a heter mi davar shaloi huter michlalo. Al tochich tuma sharei huter michlalo. Tuma by kotshim has an out. If 51% of Klal Yisrael becomes Tomei, you're allowed to bring the Korban Pesach that way. While by other things, for example, there's never a case where Chutz Lizmano is permitted, or where an Orel is allowed to eat. Now, what are we talking about? Are we talking about that the meat of a Korban became Tomei? Heichahutra. There's never a permission to eat the Tumas Basar. Ela pshita betumas gavri. Here clearly we're talking about the person becoming tamei. Vehechal hutra b'chlala, and where, in what example is there a heter that's betzibur? A korban tzibur, if there's a majority of Klal Yisrael that's tamei, you're allowed to offer it. So what? Again, we're back to a split baraisa, reisha betumas basar, seifa betumas gavri. The Gemara says I have no problem with that. Shem tuma kaparach. It's tuma. However, iboy sema, another teretz of the Gemara is kula b'tumas basar. Really, the seif is also tumas basar. Heicha hutra. Where do you find that tumas basar was also permitted? B'tumas pesach. That's not. Pesach haba b'tuma. You have a year where God's Klal Yisrael was tamei, so the korban pesach is brought b'tuma. Not only that, nechal b'tuma, and it can be eaten even in a state of tuma. Shelo ba metchilaso el achila. The whole point of bringing the korban pesach is achila. So you see, even if the basar is tamei, it can be eaten. Masif Rav Yeshua, ha-pesach sha'av reshnaso. The korban pesach animal has to be 1 year or less. Let's say you have an animal that became more than 1 year. Ushachto bizmano lishmo, and you shechted it on the 14th day of Nisan after Chatzos, which is its man and lishmo. But the korban pesach animal was too old. V'chein hashoichet acherim l'shem pesach bizmano. Let's say you have a korban shlomi, or a korban toda, or a korban asha, and you shechted it thinking that it was a korban pesach in the right time. That means Yud Dalet Nisan after Chatzos. Rabbi Eliezer in both cases poisel. Rabbi Yeshua machshir. Now, why does he machshir time of bismano? or Rabbi Eliezer apostles because it was a possibility of being a proper korban, and you invalidated, implying that hashalob is no kosher. That Rabbi Eliezer, who apostles here, would kosher if you shechted a Pesach that was too old, not in its right time. Ve'amai. Now, why should that work? Nema hoilu bizmanu poisel shlo bizmanu nabi poisel. Amar papa shani asam the Amar kra. There's a special pasuk. Ve'amartem zevach pesachu. Hu b'hav yosel. It has to remain a korban pesach. Lo hu l'shum acherim. It can't be shechted for other purposes. V'lo acherim lishmo. Bizmano shehu pasul l'shum acherim. In its proper time, it's possible if you shechted, having in mind, like say a chatas or nosha. And acherim certainly shmo. If you take a korban shlomim and you have in mind a korban pesach, or shelo bizmanu, or you do it shelo bizmanu shehu kosher from acherim ksherim lishmo. So if it's not the right time, then everybody holds it would be kosher. Rambam says Pesach she'avar shnaso, a Pesach that's more than 1 year old. Korban Pesach she'avar shnaso. Now, if you shechted bismanu shem Pesach, or shochet korban sachel shem Pesach bismanu, or you shechted a korban chatas at the right time, hare elu ksherim. Ela shelo al ba'alim shem chayva. You can eat it, but the ba'alim don't get credit for it. And you have to bring another korban for it. Like we paskin like Rav Yehuda, that is kosher. Rav Shimloi asal kamed Rav Yochanan. Rav Shimloi learned in front of Amalei. Nisni limar sefer yuchsin. Rav Shimloi wanted to learn from Yochanan the Medrash Agada on Sefer Divrei Hayomim, the last sefer of Nach. Amalei. So Rav Yochanan interviewed him. He said, Mehechanat, where are you from? Amalei Milud. Vehechan Moisvach, and where do you live now? Benardo. So Amalei, Ein Nidonim Loilu Loidim V'Lolo Nardoim. I don't teach this. I'm not Mekabel students from Lod or from Nardo. And you, Kol Shekain, to ask me Lod Umisavach Benardo. You come from both places. Kafya Vartzi. Rav Simloi was persistent and didn't let up and tried to convince Rav Yochanan to teach him. So Omerlei Nisnaya b'shloisha yarche, and he told Rav Yochanan, we'll be able to finish it in 3 months. Shakal kolab tachbei. Rav Yochanan took a piece of dirt and threw it at him. Omerlei Uma Bruria, Dvisu de Rab Meir, Barte de Rav Chanani ben Tradion. Bruria was the wife of Rav Meir. She was the daughter of Chanani ben Tradion, who wrapped himself up. The Romans wrapped him up in a Sefer Torah and burnt him. Ditanya, we're talking about Bruria here. Tlos ma shmaitza biyoma mishlosh mei ravta. She studied 300 sugyas in one day from 300 chachamim. She had a very powerful memory. She didn't finish learning it over 3 years. And you think you can do it in 3 months? So Kishakal v'azul, when he was leaving, Rav Yochanan, Amar le Rebbe, Ma ben lishmo v'shelo lishmo, la'oichla v'shelo la'oichla. He asked him, what's the difference that when we're makriv a korban Pesach, and you have in mind lishmo v'shelo lishmo, it puzzles the korban. But when you have in mind la'oichla v'shelo la'oichla, then it doesn't puzzle. So that's a very good question. And he saw that. I see you're a Talmid Chacham. Here comes that those are our words that are our limud, serve rabbanon, which means a Talmid Chacham. Tov Emelacha. I'll explain. Lishmo v'shelo lishmo is psula begufa, is a psul in the goof of the korban. La'ochla v'shelo la'ochla ain't psula begufa. It's not a psul in the goof of the korban. Lishmo v'shelo lishmo ef shalavar isuro. You can't show me a part of the animal. This is lishmo. This is shelo lishmo. So there's no way to be mavar the isur. But la'ochla v'shelo la'ochla shalavar isuro. When I'm shechting in behalf of eaters and non-eaters, well, we can point clearly, these people can eat, these people can't eat. I can have a improper machshava in all four avodot, shchita, kabbalah, ilacha, zrika. But it's only by shchita. We said it doesn't work by zrika, it only works by that act that allows you to eat it, which is the shchita. I can passel a korban yachid as well as a korban tzibur in the same way, lishmo v'shelo lishmo. But la'oichlav v'shelo la'oichlav is ein of the tzibur k'v'yachid. There is no example of a korban tzibur. We have this business of subscription. It's only by the korban yachid, by the korban pesach that you have it. Rav Ashi Omer psula begufo the ef shalavari suro chadamilsi. He wants to explain that when a korban has a psul in the goof of the korban, is the same concept as an inability to actually define where the yisur is. Why? Dimatam omar psula begufo. Why do we say that when you have a psul in machshava, it's a psul in the goof? Mishum de ef shalavari suro. You can't point to any specific part of the animal to say this is the isser, this is not. So it's chal on the whole. The isser is chal on the whole animal. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Miyom shenigna sefer yuchsin. The Medrash Agada on Divrei Yomim was buried, and the Chachamim stopped learning it. Toshash koichan shel Chachamim. That's when the Chachamim got weaker. The Chachamim and the light of their eyes got dim. Omer Bar Zutra ben Atzel Atzel Teinu Arba Mea Gamli de Drosha. Between two psukim, one in Divrei Yomim Aleph, Perek Chet, Pasuk Lamed Ches, and Perek Tes, Pasuk Mem Dalid, it says, Ule'etzel Shisha Bonim, Ve'ele Shmotam, Azrikam B'charov Yishmael Yishai Bavadia V'chanan Kol Eile B'nei Eitzel. And then there's another pasuk that says, Ule'etzel Shisha Bonim, Ve'ele Shmotam, Azrikam B'charov Yishmael V'sarev Bavadia V'chanan Eile B'nei Eitzel. So the psukim, in between these psukim, needed 400 camels to schlep all the drushes just on that one perek. Tanya, acherim oimrim hikdi mulim larelim. So let's say when I shecht, I have in mind circumcised and uncircumcised. So if I mention the circumcised first, it's kosher. But if I mention the arelim first, pasul. So maishna mulim larelim de kosher. Why? Why do we say if I have a combination of circumcised, non-circumcised, kosher, de kula or lebe'inan veleka? In order to pasul a korban pesach, the whole group that you're shechting for had to be uncircumcised. So who cares what I mentioned first? Even when I announce, I have a group, which is a mixture. Who cares what I announce first? I'm shechting for the arelim first and then the mulim. But if you need the whole group to be arelim to passel, then what's the difference what I say first? So on that question, we'll leave it till tomorrow morning.